Alcoholic Rickey B. Hey everybody. Waylon probably would have talked longer if I made him feed me tonight. I left Thomasville and me and Banks got to the Golden Corral and we got in line and I got up there and I reached in my pockets and they were empty. And I said, Banks, you're not going to believe what I did. I said, I left everything at home, my license, my credit cards, my money. And the old Banks, you ought to have seen his face, boy. He just went out there on the sidewalk. He looked like a lost puppy. Then Waylon shows up and I said, thank goodness. And he saved the day. And we'd have been two hungry puppies here tonight if it hadn't been for that. Get some housekeeping out of the way. I live in Thomasville, North Carolina. I've been there my whole life. My home group's in Denton. I have a sobriety date, November 20th, 2009. I'd like to tell you that was my first sobriety date. It's not, and I'll tell you a little bit about that later. But it just takes what it took to get here. I have a home group. It is in Denton. It's about 18 miles away, and the reason I chose that, my sponsor, Dennis M., he's from Denton, and that's his home group, so I followed him there. And I hadn't seen fit to change home groups yet, and I hope I don't. It's a great home group. We meet there on Monday and Friday. Monday we have a big book study, and Friday we have a discussion unless it's a birthday and we have a speaker. I grew up in Thomasville, had a loving mother and father. I had a father that got sober in Alcoholics Anonymous, but when I was very young, I knew nothing about his drinking. It wasn't up until I got in teenage years that I seen my father drunk. And I was very small for my age. I weighed only 4.5 pounds at birth. Wasn't expecting to live, but I did. And so in school, I was very small, smaller than everybody else, and always felt less of, and always very shy. Didn't do good in groups. I still don't like to be standing up in front of groups, but I was told when I got sober, if you don't give it away, you can't keep it. And so I'll do anything to keep my sobriety today, and not like I was in times past. Did fair in school. I never liked school. I was held back in the 4th grade. Back then, if you were kind of on the fence, they left it up to your mom and dad whether to hold you back or let you pass. And of course, my mom and dad said, no, we're going to hold him back in the 4th grade. That was the first resentment I had towards my mom and dad, I know today. Because I'd made quite a few friends at this time, especially when we got up to at that time, elementary school was through the 6th grade. And so when we got up to there, all my friends had gone, and here I was a year behind them. So had some friends in the neighborhood that hung around. We started camping out on weekends, pitching the tent in the backyard, and that was my first drink. I was at the age of 14, and I still remember to this day what it was. I can't remember who all was there, but I remember it was Bally High wine. Then I got drunk. I don't remember what I done. I don't remember what happened. There wasn't any consequences from it. Probably felt bad the next day, but it was a long period after that until I drank again. I remember being 16, and I had few episodes of drinking, and every time there was consequences from it. Even at the age of 16, I come in drunk one night. My parents had gone out of town, and I put me a steak in the oven, turned it on broil, went to the den, passed out in the den floor, and my sister come in probably an hour and a half later, and the whole house was filled with smoke. So I could have had, bad consequences from that second time drinking in my life. I can remember being at the beach, drinking a pint of Southern Comfort, passing out on the bed, and I was laying on my back, and some people come in and pulled me off the bed onto my stomach. I'd started throwing up. If somebody hadn't found me, I would have died. That's just a few first time drinking that I had. it wasn't until I got to the age 18 that I started drinking on a regular basis, and at that 18 was the drinking age then. And started out at a little restaurant in High Point called Lums, and then I moved on to nightclubs, became a partier, loved to party, and then the drinking started just about every weekend, and then moved back to Thursday night. I'd find a place on Thursday night to go party. Was still only drinking at night during this time. I'd gone to work for my father at a young age. He was in the construction business for years, and I started working for him when I was 14. And he had since bought into a lumber plant there in Thomasville. And at the age of 17, I went to work there. Still getting up in the morning, going to work, no consequences. Still partying on weekends. This was a small lumber plant. We had a sawmill and got the lumber in the rough and run it through the planer. And back then, your lumber didn't have to be grade marked like it is today. And I worked there for about 8 years and had worked my way up to vice president of the company. And boy, I was carrying them business cards around. Vice president of the company didn't mean much. If you needed to stack lumber, you stacked lumber. If you needed to work inside the office, you worked inside the office. But boy, when I'd go out partying at night and dress up and go out and get the girls, they won't know what I did, and I could flip that business card out and it had vice president on it. I felt like I was somebody. I really did. And I started hanging around with a group that peddled furniture back in the 70s. And here I was carrying $1 and $5 bills around, and we'd go out partying, and they'd pull out $100 bills out of their pocket. And I just didn't think it was right. And here they was, the old truck driver. And I was vice president of the company, and they was carrying $100 bills, and I wasn't. So I went and told my dad. I said, "Dad, I believe I'll buy me a peddling truck and go to selling furniture." He said, "Son, I believe that's what you ought to do if that's what you want to do." He never put me down for wanting to try anything because he knew I'd either make it or I'd fall on my butt. And sure enough, it wasn't just a few months. My first load was stolen from me, and the insurance wasn't covered. So I had to eat about $5,000 that time. Before the year was up, another load was stolen from me. And so peddling furniture didn't last long for me. But I do remember when I was out on the road, it was work a while and then drink a while. And that's during that time I did drink early afternoon. If you went out and sold a bunch of furniture, if it didn't take you but 3 or 4 hours, you went out partying the rest of the day. It only made sense for me. But when the finances wasn't there, I come back and asked my daddy for my job back. He said, "Well, son, we really don't need you at this time." And boy, you talking about your ego deflating. It broke my heart, is what it did. And so I went on off to the next town over in High Point and got a job with Lowe's. And sure enough, they put me in, my outside sales was in the city of Thomasville where the lumber plant was. And I was calling on the same people that I sold for when I worked for my daddy. So about 6 months of that, and I had some of the best customers that I had when I worked for my dad. And I went back from my dad and I said, "Dad, I'd really like to come back to work for you." And he said, "Well, I believe you've earned it this time." So he let me come back to work and stuck me right back on the yard stacking lumber again. I had to start over where I did before. But my dad's dead today, and I thank God for my dad, the way he raised me, because I've sure made mistakes with my son, and I know a lot of other kids today that their dad's making mistakes with them too, because it was just a different from when I grew up in Thomasville. But at the age of 18, I started drinking on a regular basis. By this time, when I went back to work to the lumber plant, I was in my mid-20s, and was still partying on weekends. And I was coming from High Point one night and drunk in a skunk, and a cop pulled me over. And I was on the wrong side of the road, and he turned around and come and got me. And I was leaning up against the car so drunk I couldn't even stand up. And I pulled out my wallet, and the baby picture fell out, and it was my sister's baby. It was my niece. He said, "Mr. Batten, I see you're a family man. I'm going to give you another chance. I'm going to let you go this time." And I couldn't even hardly stand up. This was a long time ago. They didn't think much about it back then. And he let me go, and I got about 200 or 300 yards down the road, and I was on the wrong side again, and another cop met me, and he turned around and come and got me. And I seen the blue light come on, so I backed in the side street to wait on him, and I backed into a telephone pole. So this time the picture didn't matter to that cop. He put me in cuffs and took me to jail. That episode right there is what got me to AA the first time. My lawyer suggested that I start going to AA. My dad had already got sober in the program at this time, and so I figured it'd be a good idea that I started going. I did go to ARCA. I did go to ARCA for 28 days. Had a good time out there. Got along with everybody, and I come out, and it wasn't long till I run into one of my girl I graduated with in high school. And we started dating. She had a young daughter. She was 3 years old. And I'd been sober 11 months, and I asked her to marry me. And about a year later, we got married. I had worked my way back up to vice president at the lumber plant, and everything was going good. We was building us a house. And, I had joined the church. I got baptized in the Baptist church. And, family man, everything was going great. I followed this type of lifestyle for 8 years. And my wife had never seen me take a drink. She'd never seen me drunk. She'd never seen me drink at all. And we had started going out with some friends that they drank. And we'd started going to restaurants and places, and they would drink. And my wife would drink every now and then. One day she said, "Rick, it's been so long since you've had a drink, I just don't see why you can't have just one." And that's all it took. And I agreed with her. And guys, for a long time, for a pretty long time, I was able to control when I drank. Now, as soon as I took that first drink, I didn't know how much I was going to drink, but I was able to control it there again on weekends. Didn't drink every day, we just drank towards the weekend. We never drank in front of the kids. Later on, there was a son born, and we never drank in front of the kids. We'd always go off for a weekend somewhere on special occasions or whatever, and we'd drink when we'd go off. But we didn't drink in front of the kids. My mother had started having headaches, and to find out she had a brain aneurysm, and they operated on her. And they put her in the hospital to operate on her, and didn't know whether she was going to live or not. And the next month, the lumber plant burnt down to the ground. And about this time, my dad started having pains in his abdomen. And a few months later, they put him in the hospital to do exploratory surgery, and he was eat up with cancer, and 10 days later he died. So I had a lot of responsibility dumped in my lap. During this time, the lumber plant I'd started building back the lumber plant, and I hadn't even got it finished inside. My dad didn't even get to see the building finished. And so I dove myself into work. I became a workaholic. And I got that business back running. And sometime that next year, after my daddy died, is when my wife made that statement about it's been so long since she had that drink. And sometime after that is when I picked up that first drink. I don't remember when, I don't remember where it was at, and I don't remember what it was. But I just know I started drinking. And like I said, I controlled it for a good many years. I had been gone, 1990 was the last time I'd gone to AA, and it was 2004 when I made it back to AA. Now, a lot of things had happened during those 14 years. In 94, I built another house in the neighborhood and decided, some of y'all probably remember this story, when I built a walk-in, his and hers walk-in closet off of my bedroom, and I decided it'd be a good idea to put a refrigerator in my walk-in closet. And, more than likely you got a drinking problem if you put a refrigerator in your walk-in closet, but I didn't think so. I just thought I was hiding it from the kids. I said, the kids won't see it in the refrigerator in the kitchen. We can keep it in the closet. And so we were drinking wine at this time. We were buying cases of wine, 4 gallons to a case. Ingle Nook is what we drank. And, it just got to the point where wine wasn't doing that much for me, so I started going out buying liquor. Now, I would hide the liquor in the closet. Now, why I hid it, I have no idea, because my wife probably wouldn't have said anything about it, but I would. And I'd get up to fix her another glass of wine. Now, our glasses of wine was 16-ounce plastic cups. It wasn't 4 or 6-ounce wine glasses. And when I'd get up to fix us another glass of wine, I'd go in there and grab the liquor bottle and I'd jug-a-lug it. And she finally caught on, because she told me one night, she said, you're getting awful drunk off this wine all of a sudden. And I said, well, the best thing I can do is just drink a mixed drink, put ice cubes in it and Sprite or whatever. And she said, well, that's fine. So I could cut down on buying as much wine now, but I had to go to... We lived in Thomasville. You could buy booze in Thomasville at that time, but I'd go to Lexington and buy a case of wine, which was about 20 miles away, and I'd go to Jamestown, which was about 15 miles away, and go to the liquor store over there, because I didn't want anybody in Thomasville to know I drank. I started back drinking. And so this went on for a long time. And at that time, when I put that refrigerator in my closet, the drinking started every night. By this time I had a son, Stephen. I'd go put him to bed at 8 o'clock, read him a story. After he got to bed, I would come back to the bedroom, and then my wife would start drinking. And that's what we did every night. Now, back then I would have told you she had a drinking problem and she drank a whole lot. Now I know that's not true. Rick drank a whole lot and Rick got very drunk. She was taking sleeping medication during that time, and it doesn't take a whole lot of sleeping medication and booze to put you out. So she'd go out every night, and I'd drink until I passed out every night, and did this for a long time. A lot of things happened. My stepdaughter, that was 3 when we got married, when she was a senior in high school, she got pregnant by a freshman, and we decided to let them get married and move them in the basement of the house, and they wouldn't stay in the basement. They wanted to live upstairs with us, which was probably fine with most people. But being the selfish, self-centered guy I am, I wanted all the attention. I didn't want anybody else getting attention. I wanted them to stay downstairs. I wanted to be able to put my son to bed at 8, and I wanted to go to the bedroom and drink. And it wasn't working that way. I didn't have my wife with me. She wanted to stay out there with the kids, and especially when the grandbaby got here. We had a beautiful granddaughter, and it just wasn't working out right. And my drinking completely took over at this time. I had people running the lumber plant. I had gone into another business too and had people running it, and my responsibilities was getting less and less, so my drinking got more and more. My wife came to me one day and she said, "Would you like for me to leave?" And I said, "Sure, it'd be fine." Well, if I'd have said no, I don't know what she'd have done, because she already had an apartment ready and had it furnished. All she had to do was go and open the door. So And there were some other things, we found out about each other, and when I found out things about her, we were still real involved in the church, even though we were both drinking. And I put too many people up on pedestals, even in the church, and people let me down. And I found out about this, and during one of my weekend beach trips, I called back home to find out how my family's doing, and I found out my wife had took a 50B out on me. She claims that I threatened her life on the phone. And I believe her. There's no reason for her to lie. I just don't remember it. And so she took my son away from me. He was about 13 years old at the time, never been away from his dad. And that was a 90-day sentence right off the bat that I couldn't see either one of them or couldn't come in contact. We ended up going to court. She dropped the charges as long as I would go to another treatment center, which at that time was Fellowship Hall. And went to Fellowship Hall, great place, a wonderful place to get sober. First time I quit drinking because I lost my license. I wanted to get my license back. Got back a whole lot more than the license. I've described to you a family, had all that. Now drinking was taking everything away from me again. So I went to Fellowship Hall to get my son back. Finished out at Fellowship Hall and stayed sober 1 year. Now, I'll tell you real quick that Rick stayed sober or didn't drink for 4 years. But that's a lie. I didn't have any alcohol for 4 years, but I only stayed sober 1 year. And I put my son through mortal hell during this time. I hadn't been sober long during that year, and my wife agreed to let my son come back and live with me. And now my son's mad at my ex-wife. She took him away from me. And I'm sure I had plenty of bad things to say about my ex-wife. And I regret it to this day because my son's 29 now, and he still won't have anything to do with his mother. And I've tried explaining to him that she was just trying to help him and help me, and so forth. That hadn't helped. But I got on to start drinking real bad. Other forms of alcohol come into play, and the house completely got tore up. My son and some of his friends was living upstairs, and like I say, at this time he was 18 years old. So I had underage people partying upstairs, and I had people partying downstairs with me. And it was just, it wasn't the way I was raised at all. It was completely the opposite of the way I've been raised. And the way I try to raise my kids, I tried to raise them in church. Alcohol had done something to me that took me in the pits of hell, what it did. And there the last few months, I was drinking a half a gallon of liquor a day, and I would send my son and his friends out to get the half a gallon of liquor. Now, they wasn't old enough to buy it. They had to go somewhere and find somebody to buy it for me that was 21. Give them my debit card, and they could go get whatever they wanted, and they were getting whatever they wanted, other forms of alcohol, and they were bringing it back, and they were partying, and I was partying downstairs. And my sister called me one day, and she said, I answered the phone. The first thing I told her, I said, Diane, I've had a stroke. And all she can hear is somebody babbling on the phone. I can't talk plain. Of course, I'm drunk. Can't even stand up. She gets her husband, comes over to the house, and sure enough finds me laying there drunk. And I hadn't had a stroke. I don't know why I told her I had a stroke unless I was calling for help. I don't know what I was trying to do. But she said she'd get me in the car, and she begged to take me to the hospital, or begged for me to go to another recovery center, and I wouldn't have any part in it. And this happened 2 or 3 times within a month that she did this. And when I was sober back in the 80s, Roy H. was my sponsor. And Diane knew Roy was my dad's sponsor. My dad was sober 13 years when he passed away. She got a hold of Roy, and the time I got sober in 2004 and 5, Dennis M. was my sponsor at that time. Roy gave her his name. And she called Dennis. It was like 10, 11 o'clock at night. And she said, Dennis, you need to go help Rickey. He said he's going to die if somebody don't help him. I had got down to 129 pounds and eating very, very little. And Dennis come down there to get me. I still have a dog named Oreo. Oreo's 14 years old. It's part Dalmatian and part lab. And he says Oreo run him all over the basement, trying to bite him, and he had to jump up on the kitchen cabinets. He can really tell the story a whole lot funnier than I can. He says he goes in the kitchen off of my den in the basement, and the whole kitchen floor is covered with half-gallon liquor bottles. Never took the trash out. Dog pooped over another corner. Never took the dog out the last few months I was drinking. I had 2 ways to get to the bathroom from the den. I could go in my bedroom and circle around and get to the toilet without having to go by the mirror. But if I went into the door from the den, I had to walk by the mirror. For the last few months I was drinking, I wouldn't go that way. I'd go all the way in the bedroom and circle around and go to the toilet because I didn't want to look at myself in the mirror. I hated who I'd become. For the first time, I had to drink every time my eyes was open. I would drink. I thought I was drinking a lot the last few months, but truth be known, I was picking up that 16-ounce cup full of vodka, and probably the cup is all it took to make me pass me. I was passed out. And I did that on and off. I'd pass out and come to, pass out and come to. And when Dennis come down there and found me, he immediately got somebody upstairs to come down and help him carry me to the car. And they took me to High Point Hospital. I didn't want to go. The last thing I made my sponsor do was to pour me another 16-ounce cup of vodka. I said, if you'll make me one more drink, I'll go with you. My sister had already had made arrangements. 6 or 7 months before this, guys, I'd called my sister over and had my lawyer meet us at the house, and I'd give complete power of attorney over my finances and my health to my sister. I don't know whether I knew there was going to be a time in my life that I was going to need help and I wasn't going to be able to make a decision, but it had come. So my sponsor takes me to the hospital, and I wake up the next morning and realize where I'm at, realize that I'm in a hospital. Don't know what happened, don't know how I got there. But for the first time in a long time, I was grateful to be somewhere where I didn't have to drink. I stayed there 3 days, and I come out and went to meetings. Denton on Monday night was my first meeting. This time I'd already got prior, I had already got out of the lumber business, and I just got into the other business that I was operating on too. Had somebody running it, so I had free time. So I went to 2 and 3 meetings a day for a long time. I think the first year and a half I was sober, I gained 100 pounds. I still got that 100 pounds. I had lost 49, bam, back up 25. Eating's another addiction of mine. I love to eat because I went for so long and I didn't eat. But I come in and I started listening. I started coming to big book studies. I'd always had a hard time, even in school, when I'd read, I couldn't comprehend what I'd read. I think my son had severe ADHD. I think I had ADD when I was in school and didn't know it. But going to a book study and hearing other people read and me following along, I can get a whole lot more out of it. And now, every time I open that big book and I read it, something else pops out that I don't remember reading before. But it's like somebody writing a book about you. I mean, I see myself in that book so much. And the last 2 times I was in the program, I could not relate. You know, I'd come to speaker meetings, even though I'd been sober for years. I'd come to a speaker meeting, and all I could do is when they get up there and speak, I ain't never done that. That hadn't happened to me. And, you know, before long, I had myself talked into it. You know, well, I'm not like those people. You know, our disease will tell us this time's going to be different. You know, our disease will tell us we can drink. And it told me, and I believed it. But I know without a doubt today that if I drink, I'll die. You know, I maybe be like before, go out and take a drink and I can control it for so many days, for so many weeks, possibly a year. But I know it will kill me in the end this time. I haven't heard anybody yet that comes back when they go back out drinking. It's trouble starts a whole lot sooner than it did before, and that was in my case big time. I went to even after a few years, I was still going to 6-7 meetings a week up until the last 2 years. I guess when I got to about 8 years sober, I started trying relationships. Now, 8 years without a relationship, just me and my dog, turns you into, I don't know, you're already selfish and self-centered, and then the dog don't talk back, so you can pretty well tell the dog what to do all the time. When I started to try a relationship again, it was scary, a lot of fear. I found out that I still had defects of character. Drinking was just a symptom. There was a whole lot more wrong with Rick than I thought. You know, when we first quit drinking, we think, you know, if I get alcohol out of my life, you know, everything will come back just fine. Well, it doesn't always do that. That son of mine decided he wanted to experiment with heroin. Him and his girlfriend both, and he was working for me at, I'd gone into the car wash business, so what I'd gone into. He decided that whenever he needed money, he could just go down there and open up all the machines and take the money. And I finally had him arrested, had felonies against him, and to save his life, I had him put in jail. He's got 3.5 years sober today because of this program. He quit coming to meetings about a year ago. Him and his girlfriend both. They still live with me, so they're still doing good. They've got 2 children. I've had 2 grandbabies born while I've been sober. They've never seen Pop take a drink, and I'm grateful for that. I had to go back to work. Running that business that I had somebody else running because I got sober in 2009. after everything went downhill in 2008, and so I had to let my people go, and I had to start running the business myself, and me and my son still running that business today. I try to let him do more of the work than I do. Trying to get him trained. He's been with me for a pretty long time now, but it's hard being a father and a boss man at the same time. It's almost impossible. I know all the years I worked for my dad, he always had a manager in his business, so I always worked for somebody else other than my dad. And with the business we're in, I can't afford to hire somebody else to come in and run the business. So he's just going to have to put up with Dad, I guess, until I die. But folks, I don't know where I'd be today without Alcoholics Anonymous. What it's done for my family when I was growing up, it put my dad back on the straight and narrow. And then when I needed it, it was there. When my son needed it, it was there. And if my grandkids ever need it, I want it to be there just like it is today. And well, I thank you so much for asking me to speak, and thank you for feeding me. Thank you.